Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing chess in a maze to try and beat Fairy Stockfish. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, game number 1, as you can see we've placed these blocks across the board to create a species of maze, and immediately two thoughts come to mind. Number 1, you can see the board is much larger. It is a 12 by 10 grid, which is much larger than the usual 8 by 8 chessboard, so there's a lot more space on the board. So I'm going to imagine that fighting for center space and fighting for space in general on the board is going to be a much more prevalent idea. Right, we want to push our pieces out into the board and grab as much space as possible, since there is a lot of real estate here to grab. And the second thought I have is that the blocks themselves sort of create the structure on the board, sort of create the skeleton, right? Normally on that 8 by 8 chessboard, the pawns, when they push out into the board, sort of start to connect and create a sort of skeleton in the position. That usually guides the game later on, but here we have these barrier blocks already placed. So if anything, I'm not really sure that I care about my pawns all that much. These might all just be sacrificial lambs that are going to be given away for the purposes of my plans. Because the other thing is, unless we get into like some crazy deep end game, and even if we do, how is this pawn going to get all the way to the other side to promote, right? It would have to do like some crazy capture outwards, then back in, and then promote. All of that is to say that these pawns probably won't have much of a function, not structurally, not for promotion, not really anywhere. So the only thing I want to do is kind of get them out of my way so my pieces can get into the position as fast as possible. We are met with pawn to e6 by the engine. Now this makes a lot of sense, sort of tucking in your pawns between these barrier blocks. One thing that sort of happens a lot with these asymmetrical positions slash variants, especially something randomly generated like a maze like this, is that it can lead to inequalities in the position. Say, I don't know, f7 might be particularly weak because it's hard to get the light squared bishop to protect it, or something of that nature. The problem is, because there are so many blocks on the board, it's very hard to, say, develop a bishop and somehow look at f7, right? Me and my opponent are actually weirdly far away from one another because of all this space on the board. Met with knight to c6, and I think broad strokes, our plan here is just develop our pieces. I'm trying to think of exactly where I want them to land, but the truth is, one little bishop all by himself venturing out into the deep dark forest is not going to cause a lot of damage to a 3000 elo engine. So I just need to get all of my pieces out, kind of similar to normal chess, and work from there. Met with rook sliding over. This doesn't actually see the other side of the board because we do have that maze block in between, but we'll develop our own rook as well. Met with knight to the center targeting the bishop. Seems like a little bit of a suspicious move. I could centralize the bishop, but then we might be met with pawn to f5, grabbing even more space, and we don't want to give the engine free tempo. So let's just move the bishop back. Met with queen coming out. It's playing super aggressively, but I don't think that I'm weak at all. I have these barrier blocks literally defending the entire king side of my position, so I don't think I'm in a weak position at all. So it's doing weird stuff, but I don't think I care. I'm going to keep developing my pieces. We get bishop e7. What it is doing very well, and actually in hindsight this move makes a lot of sense, is what we talked about at the beginning of the video, which is grabbing as much space as possible. You want to be like those little toddlers that when you give them candy, they reach their hands out and clench their fists because they're greedy, they want it, right? That's what Stockfish is kind of doing right now. He's greedily grabbing as much space as possible, which we're going to try and do as well. We'll defend these dark squares so the bishop can develop safely. Right, knight comes out to play. I think I can play here totally safely. And the king shuffles over. I don't think it makes sense for either one of us to castle, because our pawns, even though the board is bigger, our pawns only reach these 8 squares, so there's actually no defense besides the barrier blocks on the end, whereas in the middle of the board it's much more likely to get sort of gridlocked, because we have pawns and barrier blocks. So it's very unlikely that attack will go through the center of the board. Now, inversely, normally when you're trying to attack in chess, like in regular chess, not barrier block chess, you want to gridlock the center so pieces can't easily go from one side of the board to the other and vice versa, right? You don't want the army to be able to mobilize quickly from one end to the other and back and forth to defend wherever your flank attack is going. But here, the center is kind of inherently gridlocked, right? Because of all of these barrier blocks. So I'm assuming we should actually try for a flank attack now. It's shuffled its king to the queen side, and that does make a lot of sense. It does seem like there's a higher density of sort of barrier blocks on this side of the board, and also there are no open files, right? At least over here you can do like a little rook lift and there's like a semi-open file, whereas over here it's literally completely blocked off unless it wants to try and move its rook into here, which would just not be a good idea. So I think we're rolling with the same plan. Let's move the queen out of the way, shuffle the king over, maybe just shuffle the king straight up, bring the rooks over, and try to mobilize on the king side. Met with pawn moving forward. That doesn't change our plan whatsoever. Knight goes back. I wonder if it's trying to move its king up and over because, oh, I've just realized something beautiful. We do have an inherent advantage. This pawn and this pawn are both stuck because of these barrier blocks. So this bishop can never develop, which in turn also means this rook can never slide over across the back rank. It only can do this, which as we already discussed seems absolutely terrible. Like that cannot be a good place for a rook to be. So we're kind of just already up a piece. We're up a bishop, and this rook, we're not up necessarily, but it's going to be really hard to get that into the game. Wait, what if I just simplify? Oh my goodness, wait, let's get the queen out. I'm going to bring the rooks up, try to trade rooks. Then I'm going to try and trade knights, bishops, trade the queens off, and I'll just be up a piece. I will just be up a piece in the endgame. I mean, it'll be tricky to get like these pawns to the other side, but that's a later problem. Knight comes out to play. If it tries to trade, by all means, go for it. Let's bring the rook up. It does in fact trade. I'll take towards the center. Maybe I can mobilize my rook as well. Knight comes out. I am doubly defended, so even though this kind of looks like a fork, there are 2 attackers on the bishop, but also 2 defenders. So not my biggest concern. Let's slide the queen up, target the knight. Why is it trading? Oh, wait a second. I just said it's a problem for later, but now that I'm thinking about it, I literally said at the beginning of the video, I don't know how a pawn would promote. So even if I am, quote unquote, up a bishop, or a minor piece in general, I don't know. Well, if it's a knight, if I'm up a knight, I can definitely come hunting for pawns. Okay, wait, no, I still want to trade. I don't know why it's trading. I think it thinks it's going to be a draw, but this bishop is stuck here forever. So I'm more than happy to trade. Wow, it's like it's leaning into these trades actively. I really don't understand the engine's thought process here. I usually can kind of figure it out. I'm not sure why it wants to trade because I want to trade. I'm going to assume my reasoning is flawed somehow, but I'm feeling pretty good. Okay, let's move the knight back and trade the rooks next. King shuffles over, trade the rooks. It either forfeits the open file, which is pretty unlikely for an engine, or it will take and let me take back. Oh, it actually does just forfeit the open file. Okay, bringing reinforcements. We're going to take advantage of the fact that we have basically 2 extra pieces because this bishop actually can never escape. Look, it couldn't be any more blocked in than it currently is. And then this rook could technically escape, but the thing is, what is it going to do over here? This is defended, so it can't get into the position, and it can't even slide over to the next free square because that's more than defended. So I'm a pretty happy camper here. Pawn comes up. I mean, there's no pawn break here. It's just moving around. So let's bring in more pieces. We'll double up on the open file and then force the rook trade to happen. Nice. It's going to happen one way or another. If it moves the king upwards, then I threaten the rook trade and it still can't do anything about it because the rook is stuck horizontally. And if it moves up, then I'm just going to give check. I guess maybe bishop back is the idea, but then rook comes in, I start taking pawns. That has to be bad for the engine. Let's go rook to h5 or l5, I suppose. Okay, it moves the king up, but then I can just move down, and this rook has nowhere to go. So even though it's removed the pin, the rook is no longer pinned to the king. It still has no choice but to trade. Sure, it moves the rook up. This rook is toast forever. This bishop is toast forever. Let's trade. And we're basically up a rook and a knight. Bishop takes back. Now we just have to mobilize pieces. Let's start bringing pieces towards the enemy position. Rook goes back. Yeah, this is so strange because, okay, this bishop, I was originally kind of writing off the idea of being up a rook as well, but I am up a rook and a bishop because this bishop, obviously, this bishop is very easy to understand. The pawns are stuck to the barrier blocks and they have no captures, so that bishop is never going to leave unless it learns to work out of town, but that's very unlikely. So this bishop is toast. This rook, weirdly enough, looks like it can get out, but because of these doubled pawns, which are normally a bad thing, it actually can't get to c4 ever. So it can't get into my position. This is blocked off. This is impossible to go through. And if it moves past, obviously I will just take. And if it stands here, I mean, it's not looking at anything. So in a way, this rook is forever toast as well. Like, I mean, I guess it could do this, but I could just leave my knight here forever because it's anchored by a pawn. So it can't even do that. So I'm up a rook and a bishop, basically. Pretty big victory here. Let's keep mobilizing pieces. Rook shuffles over. Yeah, good luck with that. Let's go down and target a pawn. Rook shuffles over. It doesn't even bother defending. Let's go ahead and take. King shuffles over. It might also have sort of given up from the get-go because the engine surely immediately understood. Sorry, I just hit my mic. The engine immediately almost certainly understood that this bishop was forever gone and this rook had no mobility. So it might have already understood that it was like very much losing and it just took me a minute to catch up. Okay, let's bring this knight out, target this pawn next. King shuffles back over. Okay, it's not that willy-nilly going to lose pawns, but I can just keep bringing more and more reinforcements. Knight comes down to make sure that the king doesn't target the rook, and then we just replace one knight with another. King goes back, bringing in even more pieces now. Pawn pushes, bring in the knight, looking pretty good. Rook comes up, and it just allows us to take with check. It takes back, we'll recapture with the rook. And as you can see, we have the same amount of material, minus the pawns, of course, but my pieces move and its doesn't. Or rather, its don't. Its pieces don't? That's what I'm trying to say. King shuffles over, king working overtime since it's the only piece that can do anything. This pawn promotion is basically impossible, so what do I do now? Maybe I need to bring my king into the game. I need to come in hunting with my king as well. Rook goes back. Let's just climb the king up. Okay, we've gotten the king just about as far as he's going to get. I need this knight to target this pawn because it's pinned. And then that way I can take down this pawn, and then I just have a huge material advantage. So let's go back here. Okay, it did in fact unplug the pin, so I can no longer capture on what I was going to call e6, but I suppose it's g8. But I don't know how I can force a checkmate here. Maybe I bring my king down and like boot him out from e8. Rook comes down. I mean, it's going to try and go for this maneuver, but even then the knight covers that square, so it has no escape. Rook shuffles over. I guess I can't force that king out, can I? Wow, this is surprisingly frustrating. It's really strange because I'm so far pushed into its position, but I don't actually see where like I win. Like what am I going for here? Could I somehow reroute this knight over here and target the bishop? Oh no, maybe the e7 would be easier. Yeah, let's do the e7. But how? From e7, I'd have to have come from or I suppose g9, I'd have to have come from i10. So I'd have to have come from here. Okay, we'll do this. Jump, jump, jump back here, target the bishop, and since the bishop is forever trapped, the rook has to come down and defend. Okay, the rook has escaped, but I don't know how it's going to defend this bishop. King goes back. Isn't this just lost? Right, and that gives me enormous freedom to start capturing pawns as well, because originally I couldn't capture any of these pawns because it would free the bishop. But now with the bishop gone, I can take anything I please. Oh, I did not realize pawns could move double forward there, to be totally honest. But I can just take, I think. I don't think that matters at all. Yeah, rook shuffles over, we'll take here with check, king comes in, hungry hippos, captures all of the pawns. Right, it's coming down to take these pieces, but you're not going to convince me that I can't get checkmate on this king. Oh, whoa, it gives up on that idea. I think it sees checkmate as well. Okay, let's go back and pin this pawn. Oh, it immediately moves back, so I can't take, or can I? No, I don't think I can. Okay, check, we'll move the king back. Okay, we'll shuffle over this way. But then it pins the knight, right? And I can't come and target this pawn. Okay, we'll move back. No! No, it ended the game in a draw! You son of a gun! We were so close to winning! Oh my goodness. Okay, I will concede that this officially ended in a draw because I shuffled back when I definitely, well, I shouldn't have played this in the first place because that was a pretty obvious idea. Okay, if I had the chance to do this over, instead of playing this silly move, which just led directly into a draw, I would have rerouted the knight here, which would have required landing the knight here. So I actually would have gone back, I think. Landed the knight here, moved the rook down, threatened this pawn, then taken. And then I can't imagine it would have been that difficult to checkmate because this knight will always have an enormous advantage over this rook. The rook operates on files and ranks, and as you can see, it's very hard to pick out a file or a rank that isn't blocked off by a barrier. Whereas the knight can move freely, right? The knight could land here, for example, cover this square, stop the king from ever escaping. He's stuck on these two back ranks, and I doubt that with a king and a rook, I can't find checkmate there. But anyways, should've, could've, would've, didn't. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below if there are any other funky variations to the board that you'd like me to try against Stockfish, and I'll see you guys in the next one.